IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It is Monday, and y'all know what Monday means. That means it is time for the RTCF show. For those who don't know, some people are new and don't know. Some people have been around for a while and still haven't caught on to it. RTCF stands for R, recruiting topic, T, a Notre Dame team topic, T, and then the CF, college football. So we try to hit different angles on this show and make it, obviously there's a recruiting aspect, there's a Notre Dame team aspect. Sometimes those two go together. And then we also, Shaun and I love talking college football in general. And so we've got a lot of different college football topics that we also discuss. We will not have a show next week, but then when we get back, we're going to talk about, is college football more competitive now than maybe when we were younger? We're going to be talking about some of the best first-year starting quarterbacks, the top 10 offenses, top 10 defenses. We're going to rank Heisman candidates. We're going to have a lot of fun on RTCF talking college football this summer. So that's what the CF stands for. So without further ado, Shaun Davis and I are going to have some fun today. Shaun, how are you, my man? Are you ready to go? I feel like we've talked a lot these last few days. We were at Irish Invasion together on Friday. We've been talking all weekend. I'm ready to rock and roll, man.
Let's get to it. It's a lot to talk about, man. Great camp.
We're going to go in order today because when recruiting is not so much a pertinent topic, we sometimes will move it around. We don't always go in RTCF order. But because of the Irish Invasion on Friday, we are going to start off with that. And then the Notre Dame team topic today, we're going to talk about Notre Dame's floor and their ceiling. And then the college football segment today we're going to dive into the house settlement. We're going to go over the particulars of the approved house settlement, talk about what it means, talk about what's next. What does this whole thing mean? And so we're going to have a lot to say about that. But first, Shaun, we're going to talk about the Irish Invasion camp. You and I were together for Irish Invasion on Friday. Had a chance to be there. You, Trevor, and I were there. Went out and had some lunch afterwards, and we saw some really talented players. It's hard to see everybody, and this year's Irish Invasion was a little bit more condensed. There wasn't quite as much time to it as there normally is, and a lot of players. So we couldn't see everybody, but we tried our best to see as many guys as we could. We especially focused on quarterbacks and wide receivers and for obvious reasons. So we'll talk about a lot of those, but we're going to dive into the Irish Invasion conversation, Shaun, because obviously Notre Dame has yet to offer a 2027 quarterback. They've had several 2027 quarterbacks on campus this past week. Obviously, you had Teddy Gerard was on campus and threw during a camp workout, and then you had, which was not available to the media, you had Israel Abrams was on campus. I don't know if he threw or not. I believe he did in a camp setting. And then, of course, Malachi Ziegler was there. Some other 2027 quarterbacks. Obviously, Emmett Queen was there. He's a guy that's been to Notre Dame multiple times. Carson Shaun was there. He's a talented quarterback that really first time I've really seen him. And then there was a quarterback from Hawaii. Hunter Fujikawa was also there, 2027 player. And then there's a bunch of 2028 kids. So we're going to dive into them as well. But as we kind of kick off the segment, the recruiting segment, Shaun, I did want us to start focusing on quarterbacks, and I wanted to kick things off, obviously, with Malachi Ziegler, who we got a chance to see in person. I know you and I are both high on him in what we've seen on film. I know you've got to know him a little bit through the recruiting process. Very outstanding young man beyond just the football piece. But I want to talk, Shaun, about what we saw from him also on the field on Friday, because it was nice to see. I mean, I'm a film-first guy. Like, I don't care what you look like in a camp throwing setting. If you can't do it on film, it doesn't matter to me. But the film already checked out. Now I wanted to see what Malachi looked like in person, and we got to see him up close and personal on Friday, Shaun.
And what we saw pretty much lined up with what we saw on film. Trevor and I were standing there and we were watching him. The one thing we noticed was his throwing motion. Very smooth, quick release. So a lot of other kids, especially in the 28 class, they have some really good quick releases that we might mention. But Malachi Ziegler just is a very athletic, very good looking. He's good on the hoof. Looks like a very impressive quarterback. Ball comes off his hands with a good zip. I don't know if I would say he has elite arm talent, but it's good.
It's definitely not elite arm strength.
Yes.
If you're talking about,
that's what I meant, strength.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
But, if we break down the nuances of it with accuracy, ball placement, that's where he starts to kind of like show where he can be elite. And so just the smooth, natural motion. And what stood out to me is that he's very cognizant. And I think he pointed out when he visited in the spring that this was going to be the most important offseason of his recruitment. And that's why he bypassed playing baseball. He's a very talented baseball player as well. But he felt like he needed to really lock on his development as a quarterback overall. And that's what he's been doing. So you can tell that he still feels like he wants to be consistent when it comes to footwork. He's a very athletic quarterback, can make off-platform throws on the move. That was one of the things that I loved, is that when they had the quarterbacks rolling out in particular drills, he had accuracy and he didn't lose zip on the ball, was able to turn his hips, get good rotation. Love seeing that, but that just plays into his athleticism. And so with that, when he's in the pocket and he has drills in the pocket, there's a couple of reps where you could see he was upset with his footwork. And he was like retracing his steps, talking to himself, self-correcting himself. And so that was really good to see that he's aware of that. He has a self-awareness and that he's working on improving that. So overall, he just confirmed what we felt he was on film as a quarterback. And he had already after visiting in April, in May, Gino Gaduli goes out to see him at Benton High School. He throws 128 balls in adverse conditions and is able to put on a show. And I think for me, Bryan, we talked about this. Everybody's been asking, why is Notre Dame waiting? Why is Notre Dame waiting? And we said maybe one of the things is they're really just separating the wheat from the tare in a sense, trying to figure out which of these kids are really serious about Notre Dame. And Malachi Ziegler stands out as a young man, as a quarterback that's very serious about Notre Dame. Coming up on his own dime in April, going through that, workout. He could have canceled the workout with the rain and the wind. And no, we're going to go out here and put on a show, 128 throws. Did that, felt good after that workout, and then comes back to camp in June, to compete. So love this kid's attitude, love his willingness to want to get better, and some other things we'll talk about. But that's what stood out for me watching him perform.
Shaun, there's something that I look for in quarterbacks when I'm evaluating, and that is this guy a natural thrower? And you could be not overly accurate and be a natural thrower, and that tells me you got something to work with. I've seen guys that are relatively accurate that are not natural throwers. Brandon Wimbush, for example, was not a natural thrower. I never felt Deshaun Kaiser was a natural thrower. Like Deshaun was always kind of stuck between trying to turn his quarterback motion was too much impacted by the fact that he was a pitcher. And it was never like real clean. Jimmy Clausen, natural thrower. Everett Golson, natural thrower. Ian Book, I thought was a natural thrower, had a really clean, consistent release that just looked like it just looked smooth. It just was natural. CJ Carr's that way. Kenny Minchie's that way. And so it's something I like. I prefer. You can be not a natural thrower and be a great quarterback. We've seen plenty of that. Tim Tebow was not a natural thrower. He was an elite quarterback. There's been plenty of guys that were not natural throwers. I never thought Cam Newton was had a real natural throwing motion where it just looked clean and crisp. And he was an elite quarterback in the NFL and in college football. Malachi is a very natural thrower. Like it just like I think the comment I said to you and also about Neiman Lawrence, who's from the 2028 class, is like it's like that's what God put him on this earth to do. It's not. I think God has much bigger plans for people than football. But you get the point that I'm making. Like that young man was just like born with a body that just was going to look clean and natural. Very quick, compact release, very relatable or repeatable. Can change arm angles. We didn't see him do a ton of that at the Notre Dame camp, but there was a little bit of that. He can change arm speeds. He knows when to kind of not hurry things up, but I got to speed things up a little bit. What I liked is when he did speed things up, he didn't lose accuracy. And that was the big thing for me is the ball placement on Saturday was very good. You're correct. He doesn't have like a bazooka, like a howitzer for an arm. We saw a 2027 kid, Derek Baker, he's from Florida. He went to Aquinas. Now he's transferring to Georgia, has a cannon for an arm. There was another 2027 quarterback, and I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name. I think it's Draken. I think it's how you Foster. I think it's how you pronounce his name. 5'11", $170, looked like a D3 quarterback I would have recruited. And then he steps back to throw, and it's just like a howitzer connected to his right shoulder. Malachi doesn't have quite that type of arm strength, but he can make every throw. We saw him banging comebacks. He was hitting quick, in dig cuts, backside dig cuts with ease. He was dropping the ball over top on post routes. It's not so much distance that I care about. I've seen guys can throw the ball 60-plus yards, and they're not good deep ball throwers because the ball hangs up there forever. I want to see a guy that can throw the ball 50 yards, and it gets up and it gets down in a hurry with nice trajectory. That's what I saw from Malachi Ziegler. So I saw everything from him. The footwork is improved. It's still a little bit of needs some work. But when you look at it compared to high school film, it's much better. It's not to be too much. It's not too much of a surprise because he did play on a terrible football team that went 1-9 last year. And I think that's a bit of a hang up for some coaches around the country. It's like, okay, this kid's a great talent, but you'd think a kid with his ability could lead a team to be better than 1-9. But we're going to see a little bit something different this year with the new coaching staff at his high school down there in Louisiana. But the footwork is getting cleaner. Even when moving around, like it's one thing to sit, drop in the pocket, but you mentioned, Shaun, there were plenty of drills they were asking him to move around, and it looked really clean. He's a good athlete. He's not a runner, but a good athlete. And he's a lot like what Kenny Minchie was in high school, what CJ Carr was in high school, where they could run and do damage if they wanted to, but his primary purpose is I'm using my athleticism to throw the football, to buy time, to move in the pocket, to throw the football. And Malachi comes from that field as well. But those are the things that I saw from him, Shaun. And, I like the fact that he came and worked out and not only just threw for the coaches, which is I like as well. Teddy Gerard did that, for example, and I respect that. But I like the fact that he did it in a competitive setting where you're not throwing to stationary targets, you're throwing to one-on-ones, and you're throwing, moving targets, and you're kind of dependent on your success is also somewhat dependent upon those guys around you. So I respected that. And then, of course, he won the accuracy competition at the end as well. He was he hit 3 of the 4 bags, and the one he missed by like that. It was like right in front of him. He missed by like that much. So I was very impressed overall by Malachi. It's a really strong, from what I can tell so far, a really strong 2027 quarterback class. And he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks I've seen on film so far. And he backed that up with what we saw on Friday.
Yeah, and I think what you talk about, Kaiser, pitcher, I think it's a little bit tougher for pitchers to kind of like assimilate a better throwing motion, where you talk about a middle infielder like Malachi Ziegler. They're used to throwing from different ranges.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they turn a double play sidearm. Then they have to come from different angle if they're backhanded and throwing over the top to get it. So they have
not a windup at all. I mean, a shortstop. Like I played shortstop and pitched. And I pitched like I played shortstop. I wasn't a natural pitcher. I could throw really hard, which is why I was really good. But for high school, it was really good for high school. But I would have had to learn a lot moving forward because I pitched more like a shortstop, and I was used to the windup, the mechanical nature of pitching wasn't natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas shortstop, it was more natural, which led much more to being able to translate to playing quarterback. So whereas pitching is completely the opposite of throwing a football. It's slower. It's more methodical. It's more mechanical. It's a much different motion. It's a very unnatural. I mean, if you ever pitch, like it is such an unnatural feeling where throwing a football to me is much more of a natural thing. So you see that with him. I think it makes a lot of sense why he's that way. A couple other 2027 quarterbacks that we saw, Shaun, that we liked. One of the more intriguing players that I saw was Derek Baker, who was a backup quarterback at St. Thomas Aquinas last year, has not been a starting quarterback in high school yet. Rising junior, which is not unheard of. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger started until his senior year of high school. But he saw him, and we're looking at him. He doesn't have one of the red jerseys on. So I'm like, well, he must not be one of the guys they're looking at because he's got a blue jersey and not a red jersey. And then, he's built more like a pitcher. So, I mean, that's the thing is he's got that pitcher's frame, that thick lower body, big old thick calves, almost built. If you're talking about football build, he's built more like a middle linebacker than he is a quarterback. And then he starts throwing, and you're like, now that's a bazooka. That's a cannon. He has a very strong arm, a very fast through the throwing zone, gets through it very quickly. It is a little mechanical, and everything is gas. And that's the one thing Derek's going to have to work on is, hey, it's okay to throw a crossing route with a little bit of touch, meaning it's got to be on the line, but you don't need to light that sucker up. Everything he threw was fastballs, but there's a lot of tools to work with. And I said this, if I was looking for a second quarterback in this class, I'd have no problem taking that kid because he's got a very high ceiling. He's the kind of kid that'll go to like a Georgia Tech or a Duke or a Wake Forest, and nobody's really heard of the kid because he wasn't a highly ranked recruit. Next thing you know, he's a 3-year starter and all ACC type of player, and that's the kind of tools this kid had at quarterback. And another kid that we like too, Shaun, was, as we talked about, it's Drake and Foster. And guys, I don't. This kid walks over there and I'm thinking he's like a 2029 kid because he looks, he doesn't look very big. He's like 5'11", 170. And his 5'11" is, he's got a very like low cut. Like his legs aren't that long. Like he's not going to get a lot taller. And he just looks kind of is what he is. And he's the kind of kid that I look at and say, like, that's kind of what we tend to see a lot of times at the Division III level playing quarterback. And I'm like, okay, well, not going to pay attention to that kid. And then he gets up there, and I'm just kind of watching because there was nobody, like no guys I was watching that were in his first drill. I think he throws an out cut and just, whew, I'm just like, whoa, okay. And then the next time he throws, I think he throws a post route, and he throws it from about midfield, and the ball goes about 3-4 yards past the receiver and lands at the back of the end zone. And it was just like nothing. Wham. And I'm like, okay, now I'm watching this kid. Just a howitzer for an arm, Shaun. But he's 5'11", 170. And that's going to turn a lot of people off. But he actually, I thought, had the best arm of any quarterback in attendance. Ball placement was outstanding. Arm strength is elite. Quick throwing motion. Good timing. That was one that my only real knock on Malachi is in the one-on-ones. He was a little late at times, throwing some of the ins, the curls and comebacks. But Malachi is 6'2 plus, 200 pounds plus, and this Draken's 5'11, and that's going to turn some people off. But just as far as pure arm talent, forget the prospect and the projectables into the next level. You look at that arm and you're thinking, that kid. Now that's a big time arm right there. And I thought that was interesting is the two kids that have the best arms are probably going to be the two 2027 kids that have the least impressive offer lists.
Yeah, it was funny because Trevor and I were standing there. And so just to give you a picture of what we were looking at, there were about 30 kids there, 30 quarterbacks there. And they're broken into two different groups. And the first group was primarily, you would say, the higher ranked kids, the kids with better names, Ziegler, Purcell, Gerard, and a couple of other kids. Most of them were 27 kids, and maybe 1 or 2 28 kids were sprinkled in. Then you had a separate group, and they were under the eyes of Coach Gino Gaduli and Coach Rawlings. And then on the other side, you had some other coaches, and then you had the Notre Dame quarterbacks, Kenny Minchie. I think Noah Grubbs was there. Did I see Noah Grubbs? I think Noah Grubbs was there. I think Kenny Minchie was there.
He might have been.
I think Trevor mentioned him. You had Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr, and Herbert was there. Let's see. I think that was it. But they were watching over the second group, which primarily, some of the other 27 kids and mostly the 28 kids. And so all of a sudden we see number 14 in the other group going through drills, and they had this one drill where they would have to come up into the pocket, move to the left, move to the right, and then throw to the right, and then they would reverse it. And all of a sudden, I'm watching this group, and I'm looking at, the main guys, and I hear Trevor say, "Oh, boy." And so I'm like, yo, what's up? And he starts talking about the Baker kid, but we didn't know his name at the time. It's just like number 14 in red. I'm like, okay.
The Baker kid was 4 in blue.
Number 4 in blue, I'm sorry. And we're like, oh, okay. And then next thing you know, we start paying attention to him, and it's like, yeah. And it wasn't until the competition where I started to pay attention when you made mention of, the tree trunks that he has. And I'm like, Oh, okay. Yeah. This kid is built different. So, yeah, he was very impressive, but he caught our eye just in the drills on the other side of the field. And it was apparent that he had a rocket for an arm, like you said.
Mhm.
Yeah. Him and Foster probably had, like you said, the
Oh
two
yeah,
best arms of the camp.
as
And
like
it was
from like a
noticeable.
power standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very noticeable. But overall, I loved what I saw just from the lineup of quarterbacks because they had about 3 or 4 28 quarterbacks
Yeah,
just from that camp that you were like, okay,
yeah.
these kids have to be on the radar
You don't
because
want to be
they're
waiting
very
till
talented.
next summer to
No,
offer Neiman
no,
Lawrence and Trayvon Towns
Trayvon
and
Towns,
yeah,
no.
yeah. Couple other just quick 2027 notes before we move on to the 28 kid Sean's because I definitely want to talk about them. We did see Jamison Purcell. Sean, I'll let you talk about him because I know you were a little higher on what you saw from him than I was. Also saw Emmett Queen. I like Emmett Queen. He's got a really nice quarterback frame, real clean release, very accurate. Uh, had a good day. The issue I have with Emmett Queen is I just don't see the ball coming out the same way as it does with some of the other quarterbacks. And seeing him in a day where he is throwing next to Malachi Ziegler and Derek Baker and Drake and Foster and Neiman Lawrence and Trey Towns and some of those guys, the ball just doesn't have the juice that some of those other guys have, which was it's not the end all be all. There's plenty of great quarterbacks that don't throw the ball with a lot of juice. But when a lot of things are equal, that's something to keep in mind. I thought he was the more impressive. I thought his accuracy was pretty solid. I thought he was really good in that regard. Good timing. The guy that I wasn't as high on Jamison Purcell, Sean, but I know you liked a little bit more of what you saw from him than I did.
No, well, first of all, Jamison Purcell, local kid, Naperville Central, and I was kind of shocked that his name was like connected to Notre Dame. They were looking at him when news broke early in the spring. And I was like, man, let me check this kid out because I've never seen him play. And so I looked at the film and I saw the arm, and I'm like, oh, okay. And on film, he looks different on film than he does in person. That was the one thing I noticed. I was like, yo, he's a little bit smaller in person than I expected based upon his film because what I saw on film was just a raw athlete. You can just say he's a raw athlete, really good movement, can run the ball effectively, can definitely throw the ball down the field. And so when I saw him throw in person, man, arm strength is really good for his size. Because now I'm looking at him like, man, he's kind of like, I'm not comparing him by any means arm strength and power to Drake and Foster. But for his size, like, man, this kid can throw it. I expect him to be a little bit bigger, but I think just his overall ability and what he does, I think it kind of piqued the interest of Notre Dame because they were looking at him. Of course, Israel Adams from Montini, they were looking at him.
Is it Abrams?
Abrams, I'm sorry, Israel Abrams from Montini, they were looking at him. So, they're just
he didn't was he throw? I didn't see him throw on set.
No, he came in 2 days before.
He did a private.
He came in Wednesday and did a private. Yeah, he did a private that Wednesday. So, yeah, Purcell is somebody that I guess the staff they like something about him on his film, and they brought him in to be able to see him throw in person. And from what we saw, it was nothing that really jumped off the screen. Solid quarterback. And I just want to see if he can make a jump. That's what I'm waiting. I want to see if he can make a jump in his junior season. Because, like I said, talent-wise, from a raw standpoint, the tools are there. But like you said, he was throwing right next to Malachi Ziegler. And that is where you get into, like, you can see a kid in a private workout. But then when you put him next to another really talented kid, now the little differences start to kind of show up. And so for me, in the competition part of the camp, he rolled out. He missed a couple of passes, rolling out to his right.
That's where the athleticism thing you talk about, where
Yeah.
a kid like him is not going to shine in an event like this the way that some of these other kids are, because his game is more about it needs to be 11 on 11 and be able to kind of play a little bit of street ball, that kind of thing. Is his game is more built around that, and is 5 to 10 yards in, he was fine. It's when he started having to throw
down the field. Then you saw, and his ball really, like you said, the nice trajectory, and it comes down really quick. He didn't have that. So I'm going to sit back and wait, see how he develops. But, I would probably have out of that 27 class, it's fair to say, he would be towards the bottom of the quarterbacks, in my eyes, based upon, because I was intrigued by the film, but based upon what I saw at the camp, that's where I would sit with that young man.
If you are interested in Jameson Purcell, you can't allow an event like this to
deter you.
You have to take it in the proper context. It's like I've said this a million times. If it came down to I am looking to build a 7-on-7 team. Who do I want on my team? Who do I want as my quarterback? Tim Tebow or Tommy Rees on my 7-on-7 team? I'm taking Tommy Rees.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm talking about who do I want in my 11-on-11 game, that's a no-brainer. Tim Tebow is one of the best quarterbacks of my lifetime as far as just 11-on-11, just winner making plays kind of thing. Riley Leonard's an example of that. For Notre Dame, there's quarterbacks that have played at Notre Dame recently, maybe even a Drew Pine, that might be better 7-on-7 quarterbacks, but you get an 11-on-11 game and it's not even close. So Drew Pine's probably a bad example. Jack Cohn would be a great example. And, I'm a big Jack Cohn guy. 7-on-7 tournament, give me Jack Cohn any day of the week. Give me an 11-on-11 game, and it's give me Riley Leonard any day of the week and twice on Saturdays. You know what I mean? So, or in the postseasons, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and Mondays. But that's what you see. Let's talk about the 28 kids here real quick, Shaun, before we move on to some other positions. I was very impressed. There's 3 kids that I thought really just stood out to me, and honestly might have been the 3 most impressive prospects, along with Malachi Ziegler, that was there. We're talking about Neiman Lawrence from Miami Northwestern. Talking about Trey Towns, who's from Oaks Christian, the alma mater of Jimmy Clausen, and then a Michigan native, Donald Tabron, was also there. If that's any indication of how good the 28 quarterback class is going to be, those 3 kids, then this is going to be a great quarterback class. I'm not saying they're top 100 players now because I haven't evaluated their film, and there's no way I can rank a kid based on a camp workout. Tabron's the only one I've really seen high school film of and studied it all. But as far as just the tools you look for, they all 3 had the tools that you want in a top 100 caliber quarterback. I thought Neiman Lawrence probably had the most natural throwing motion of all of them. He has a really clean release, really natural thrower. I thought all 3 of them threw great deep balls. Just got up, got down, could get distance. I thought Trey Towns had a little bit of a stronger arm than the other 2. Donald Tabron is a much longer player than the other 2, so there's a little bit more leverage going on there. A little bit, some levers are going in contact there. Early on, I thought Donald's ball placement wasn't great, but as he kind of got comfortable, he was throwing some absolute darts. And at times, it was impossible to tell some of them apart. Like Trey and Neiman were like going back to back, and like one was number 2 and the other was number 3, and they both had like some do-rags on and top to kind of keep, because I think they both have like little short dreads. So I think it was just to kind of keep it from kind of flopping around. And so I couldn't tell them apart half the time because they're so similar in how they throw. I mean, very similar mechanics. The only thing you could tell is Neiman was just a little bit more loose as a thrower, and Trayvon was a little bit more mechanical. But I love the way the ball came out for both of them. I thought the ball placement for both of them was very good. And Trayvon Towns is an example of a guy that throws. He's got a little bit more. He's a natural thrower, but it's a little bit more mechanical, but didn't affect his ball placement at all. That's what I say is I prefer this, but you don't have to be that to be a great thrower of the ball. And I've seen natural throwers who just aren't accurate quarterbacks. Mark Sanchez has one of the cleanest throwing motions I've ever seen, and he just was never a super accurate quarterback. But I tell you what, all 3 of those kids, Shaun, have loads of potential. And you know what I liked is it didn't look like they were competing against each other in any kind of pressure way. It's almost looked like they were just out there kind of competing in a more fun way, like, rooting for each other, encouraging each other. Okay, you threw a nice ball. No, I got to throw a nice ball. And I thought all of them handled that really well. I was impressed by that trio of quarterbacks, Shaun. And if Notre Dame offered any one of those 3, I'd offer all 3 of them like on the spot. There's no way you're going to be able to wait another year to offer those kids if you want to have a shot.
And I love it goes back to the culture. I think the culture and the energy of the day was absolutely electric. Like you could hear. It was funny. We went it was so electric and so many dynamic voices on both fields that it wasn't until the back half of camp that for the first time, I turned to you and said, I think that's the first time I recognized Mike Denbrock's voice today. Like, because everybody in it,
I
everybody.
had heard him several times, but
Yeah.
yeah, you were correct. Yeah.
And I was like, because you had gone around in that area
Right. Right.
and had heard him. But
Yeah.
where we were standing, it was just so much energy on both fields. It was like, oh man, Denbrock stood out right there. I don't know who he was getting after, but he stood out at that very moment. But that just goes to show, and a lot of the kids talked about that, like the energy that the coaching staff brought, and they made it fun. Like it wasn't like this tension-filled, camp with competition and guys playing uptight. Kids were just going out there, cheering for each other, having fun, building camaraderie. The coaching staff had great camaraderie with kids. And so it was really one of the best camps, in my opinion, one of the best invasions that I've been to.
I was at an invasion in 2017, 2016 that had JT Daniels, Sam Howell, Avery Davis, among other quarterbacks. This is one of the deepest, if not the deepest, quarterback group I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, there were 9-10 Division I quarterbacks. Now, varying levels of Division I quarterbacks. Not all of them were Notre Dame kids, but 9 to 10 Division I quarterbacks at the very least and at this camp. And I just want to clear something up real quick too. When people, looks like there's some people want to know what mechanical means. Mechanical just means there's two. It's more regiment. It's more segmented. Where there's like I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. It's just there's more parts to it. There's more of a pause. There's different things where it's here, 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 as opposed to just a kid that just does it more naturally. If you shoot it frame by frame, it's going to look exactly the same. If you took still shots of a kid that was mechanical and a kid who wasn't, and you just stopped it at every point, it's going to be here, you're here, you're here, you're here. But the kid that's more natural, it's all one thing. And that's where Shaun's kind of talking about the difference between like a shortstop and a pitcher. Think of a pitcher's windup. It's very mechanical. It's here, I'm rocking, I'm dropping it down here. There's a pause, I'm coming here, I'm throwing. Whereas shortstop is just all one clean motion. You're catching it, it's going in, it's going out. Very different type of throwing motion. So that's what more mechanical means. It doesn't mean you have to be slower. There's mechanical kids with I thought Trayvon Towns was a little bit more mechanical, very quick release still. It's just different. And I've always found that there's a greater tendency towards the more natural throwers to be more accurate than the mechanical guys, but it's not a hard and fast rule. And so I just wanted to be clear on what that is so people understand that. So DJ, I'm sure you weren't the only one asking that question, so I'm glad you asked, and I just want to clear that up. But yeah, Shaun, Neiman Lawrence, I hadn't heard of him before Saturday. I heard of Trey Towns. I've heard of Donald Tabor, and he's a big time recruit and has been on campus many times, or he's been on campus before, I should say, to Notre Dame. I wasn't familiar with Neiman Lawrence before Saturday or Friday, but I'm very, very familiar with him now. Very talented quarterback. So I was very impressed by that group, Shaun. There's a couple other kids that I saw that I want to watch some film on. One of them is a 28 kid named JJ Chapman. I'm trying to remember where he's from. He's either from Kentucky or Wisconsin. I forget which one he is. I think he might be the Wisconsin kid. I saw him maybe throw 4 or 5 throws, and they were all really impressive. And so I'm like, okay, I want to go back and watch some film of that kid and kind of get a better sense of him as a player. There was a couple kids like that. There was a quarterback named Hunter Fujikawa. I think he's a 27 or 28 kid, but he's from the same high school as Manti Te'o and Maris Leofau. Very mechanical release, very mechanical, very long, but it jumps out of his hand. So he's an interesting kid that I'm going to go back and look for some film. And then Carson Schoen's another kid that doesn't look like a Division I player, just standing there. He's like maybe 6 feet tall. Then he starts throwing, real live arm, accurate, real clean motion. So it was impressive how many talented quarterbacks, just kids that are just real natural throwers that we saw at this event on Saturday. Or Friday. I keep saying Saturday because it's usually on a Saturday, but it was on a Friday this year. A couple of receivers I want to talk about, Shaun. Obviously, there's one receiver for sure that we got a chance to see, and we'll talk about him first, and then we're going to talk about the guy that I thought was the most impressive of everybody that was there. But the quarterback I want to start off with is obviously Quentin Burrell, who's a 2027 quarterback wide receiver from the state of Illinois. Not related to the Quentin Burrell that played at Notre Dame, I don't believe, Shaun. I think you and I have talked about this. Not the same Quentin Burrell family, but big-bodied kid. I've seen him on film, liked him on film, got a chance to see him on Saturday. A few things that stood out to me, Shaun. Really good size, 6'2"-ish, but built well. And he's got, long arms, really nice catch radius, great body control. Like had a number of just really tough grabs that he made in the practice and like really clean hips, good foot quickness. He needs a lot of work as a pure route runner, but he has an understanding of what he's doing. Not quite as like the pure speed didn't blow me away, but plenty fast enough at his size with his ball skills to be a really good player. Micah Gilbert-ish in how he plays as far as style, a little bit more shiftiness than Micah, not quite as thick as Micah, but that type of player. I was impressed with what I saw from Quentin. It was good to see him in person look as good as he does on film.
It is one of those guys that you look at, and like you said, you don't get that just wow, but to see him at his size with his athleticism and his body control, good hands, almost ran me over on one particular rep, running the out route. And you just see him like, yo, this is a big kid. And sometimes watching from the stands, you don't get to really, grasp just how big some of these kids are. But he's listed at around 6'2", 6'3". He's still a young kid. So, and, he's listed at 175, I think. And I was like, yo, he's not 175. I was like, this definitely has to be, an old measurable. So, he looks at about 6'3", maybe about 185, 190, maybe.
Rivals has him at 6'3", 190.
Okay.
I don't know if he's
that's more up to date.
6'3", but he's in that ballpark.
He's in that ballpark.
Looks far more
absolutely. Than
what,
like you said,
yeah.
He's put together.
247 is the one that has him at 175. That might have been like maybe his freshman year or something, but that kid's not close to 175.
No. And I will say this is his second consecutive year being at the Invasion.
Right.
This is his second Invasion. So he's very comfortable, great relationship. You saw the rapport between him and Mike Brown after pretty much each rep, talking to each other, very coachable, open to being coaching. But that comes from the program he goes to, which he said after his April visit, Notre Dame is very similar to Mount Carmel. It's very similar. The way they have things, the culture, everything. So it's an easy transition. And he has a great relationship with Mike Brown, and it's getting even stronger. He talked about that after the Invasion. And so, you pointed out everything that he showed. The one thing for me that just sticks out, this kid in state championship games as a freshman was making plays. Then he follows that up his sophomore year with 75 receptions, 1,257 yards, and 18 touchdowns as a sophomore. Yeah. So production. And he
against pretty good competition, Shaun. He's not playing
they play a tough
urban areas you and I have talked about that aren't great competition. Like Absolutely. They play good competition in Mount
Absolutely. So are you going to get that high 4.3, low 4.4 type of kid like with speed? No,
not yet.
I want to point.
Yeah,
he does a great job. I was watching him on his release, and he creates angles and separation when he has to run that go, which kind of allows him at his speed and size to be able to get on top of the defensive back and then create enough room with his great body control and hands to make plays. He knows how to play. He knows how to play. And he's only going to get better because he's going to clean that up.
Shaun, one of the things that can be concerning about a kid like him is he is bigger and he is so, he's advanced for his age and all that. You wonder, like, what's the ceiling? But that's the thing I like about him is because there is still room to work for him. Yeah. There still is. He can still keep getting stronger. There is some juice there to be tapped into speed-wise, but he's a quality athlete. Like, there's room for him to get better. But he's one of those things that just because he's closer to his ceiling than maybe some other kids doesn't mean his ceiling's still not really high. Yeah. It explains why he's a top 50 recruit right now. So he's a good-looking kid. Good looking kid. And in the chat, he's closer to 190 than he is 175.
And he is 175. Yeah.
And he's at least 6'2". Yeah. I mean, I'm not someone who gets into, is he 6'2" or 6'3"? Whatever. It's the same. It's different than 6'1.5" or 6'3" or 6'1" and 6'3". He's at least 6'2", well-built kid. Yeah. But he's also not a kid who's muscular in a negative way to where he's tight. Yeah. That was the thing that I wanted to see in this, because in high school, you don't get with what he does in high school, you don't get a chance to see that as much. I wanted to see that today when he is running more comebacks and double moves and things like that, and that type of thing. And I was impressed by that. Yeah. Very, very, very strong performance. Was not the best receiver that we saw on Saturday, however. That was Rob Larson, a kid who I had no clue. I left my house 11 a.m. on Friday, not knowing who Rob Larson was. He was just a name on a roster to me. I very quickly learned who Rob Larson was. Rob Larson is about 6'3", 185, 190, very similar size to Quentin Burrell. 2027 player, yes. Same class as Quentin Burrell. Far more advanced, and when you know the high school he came from, you get it. He's from Folsom High School, same place that Rico Flores is from. Shaun, I know you talked to him about that. You said you told me that Rico has nothing but great things to say about Notre Dame. That was a concern I had. Same program as Ryder Lions, his older brother Walker Lions. This is a program that I don't know who's the receivers coach there, but those kids know how to play the game. This is one of the most impressive receiver performances I've ever seen. Probably a 4.6 something 40 time. Don't care. So's Cooper Kupp. So's Devontae Adams. So's DeAndre Hopkins. Don't care. This kid has the things that you look for to be dominant without being a burner. As a sophomore last year, had 20-some catches for averaged over 20 yards a catch, 10-plus touchdowns, I believe. Elite route runner, Shaun. You talk about knowing how to play, and not a camp route runner. Like, nothing drives me more nuts than to watch kids at camps and one-on-ones and 7-on-7s who are running routes. It's like, dude, that doesn't work in real football. Your quarterback doesn't have 5 Mississippi to get the ball to you every time. So you can do like 87 moves off the line, stutter, go, double, pump, work your dig cut. The quarterback's already back to the sideline getting the next play by now. I mean, what are you doing? This was a natural route running. This is stuff that works. It's translatable. Great understanding of leverage. Something Quentin also did very well. Understands, hey, this guy's playing me inside for a reason. This guy's playing me outside for a reason. And he got great separation on everything but go routes. That's where the speed comes into play. And the reason he was getting great separation on everything else is because he's an elite route runner. And even though he lacks elite speed, he has outstanding foot quickness. That's the difference between being a separator on anything other than post and goes and a separator versus other things is you may be a 4.4, but if you're super choppy getting in and out of your breaks, you're not going to be getting great separation on stops and digs and things like that initially. He does. And so you see that where he's running cuts, like stop cuts, and there's 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet in between him and the DB on him. And it didn't matter who was covering him. It's just great body control. He's 1-2 out of his break, sinks his hips. I always talk about sinking hips, Shaun. You saw a great example of what I'm talking about with Rob Larson. Using his hips as his stops, not to stop as his breaks, not his feet. Just and as good a ball skills. And this is what, like, it's him and Quentin Burrell. You watching those two kids playing together, you're talking about elite ball skills. And as good as Quentin was, Rob even stole the show even more. I mean, just making ridiculous one-handed catches on go routes where it's like the ball's behind him. I don't know that I've ever seen and Shaun, I've been to Army All-American games. I've seen Michael Floyd live. I've seen Devontae Smith live. I've seen some great receivers live. I've never seen a kid dominate one-on-ones and things like that quite like it, with the exception of those type of guys. Like, those are the kind of guys I've seen dominate like this. Never seen anyone do it at Irish Invasion. And that includes Kevin Stefferson, who had probably the best invasion performance I've ever seen until I saw Rob Larson. Like now, again, he's not the prospect Michael Floyd was, because Michael Floyd was running a 4.4, right? I mean, it's just, but this kid is if Notre Dame offered him tomorrow and took him tomorrow or today, I'd be like, great pickup. If their 2027 class has Quentin Burrell and Rob Larson in it, I don't want to hear jack about what kind of recruiter Mike Brown is. I mean, those questions are answered in my opinion. That's how good, in my opinion, those two kids were.
If I took all of his highlights, there's one song that I would put to it, and that's Eminem, Lose Yourself. You talking about getting one shot to shine and not blowing it? That's exactly what this kid did at that camp. He seized the opportunity, and boy, did he put on a show. He stole the show. He was the buzz. He was the buzz amongst parents. Other parents were watching his reps, saying, "Ooh, wow." Other parents. That just lets you know this kid absolutely wowed everybody. And even when we came inside from the one-on-ones and drills on the outside, and they went to the competition end it,
which was the guys that they're recruiting, the best of the best,
best of the best. Yeah. He went up against the best of the best. Now, he didn't come in as one of those guys. He put himself in that end of the camp competition, and he didn't stop. He took it to even the next level. So this kid, in my opinion, and we're going to have more information about his experience, how he was feeling coming into the camp, what his thoughts were, and the Notre Dame connection that he has going all the way back to when he was 10 years old and a former Notre Dame quarterback. We're going to have all of that up on the board and for a full story in the next coming days. But I just want to talk about Mike Brown spent significant time with this young man after everything was over. He definitely caught the eye. That was one rep where Mike Brown ran from like the end zone and met him as he ran back to the group of players and just smacked him on his butt and said, "Yeah, that's how you do it." So he came out of this camp talking about Rob Larson. He came out feeling like and knowing that now he is on the radar of Notre Dame. He's on the radar of Notre Dame. So, that's a great story, man. Just being able to watch that in person, a kid coming into an event like this and seizing the opportunity. And like you said, not being like super athletic, but saying, "I'm just going to go out here." Brian, that was so much room.
I say not super fast. I thought he was pretty athletic.
He's
but he
athletic.
Just wasn't fast.
He's not being super fast, but he was beating defenders, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah,
like he was embarrassing, or he was really making some defenders look bad, almost to the point. You know how you're in line with somebody else and you're seeing who you have to match up with. And I would have faked the injury, like, man, let me step to the side and get back 2 spots because I don't want to match up with that kid because he's putting in work on everybody. That's the type of day this kid had. It was very impressive. And if you say it's the best you've seen,
like at Irish Invasion,
Invasion, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and
volumes.
Like it's been very. I've shared with you, Shaun, in private stories how the most dominant performance I've ever seen in person was Michael Floyd. And I mean, and I've seen Devontae Smith. I've seen big time players. Michael Floyd was just a man amongst boys. That was at an Army All-American game against the best of the best nationally. It wasn't that. First of all, this kid still has 2 years of high school football left. So keep that in mind. But it wasn't that type of dominance. But Michael Floyd was a first-round draft pick and one of the best receivers I've ever seen, and was part of the best receiver class I've ever seen. But I say that to give context of, like, this is my reference point. This is the greatest, and this is where this one stacks up. But this was for a rising junior, a kid who just finished his sophomore year of high school. I thought it was impressive. And the thing too, Shaun, is what also matters is you got to be careful sometimes when a guy dominates, and you got to know who he's going against, not just at DB, but also the other receivers. If he's going against a bunch of receivers that are just like MAC level players, then it's going to tell you something. But there were some very talented receivers in attendance that we're going to talk about also just quickly. Maddox Wells, a 2028 receiver from Fort Wayne, who I like a lot. He was the kid with the orange helmet, the short kid with the orange helmet. Really great feet, just really good feet. Bryson Thompson is a 2027 receiver from Texas. I thought he had a great release, had some outstanding catches during the performance. Jordan McKinley is a very big physical receiver that I could see maybe growing into a tight end at some point in time, like an H-back type of tight, Jack Larson type. But wants to stay at receiver, fine. Very good athlete, strong, 6'3", 215. Where's he from? Is he Chicago kid, or an Illinois
McKinley's
kid?
a Texas kid,
He's a
isn't he?
Texas kid. Let me see here. He's a Illinois kid from Loyola. The Texas kid is the shorter one.
Yeah, I'm mixing up the names.
Kid.
Yes, he is from
that's Bryson Thompson. He was the Texas kid.
Because you can tell the rapport that him and Quentin Burrell had.
Yeah. But like he was a really impressive kid, big physical kid, not going to blow anybody away with speed, but just he's one of those. If he's 1-on-1, he's open. Just good hands. A lot of talented receivers there, Shaun, that we saw. I couldn't even do justice to name them all. There were so many good receivers. There was a kid there.
We saw Durant was there, right?
I didn't see him. I mean, he was on the roster, but I didn't see him. I saw him last year at the camp, but I know he was on the roster, but I didn't see him. And the guy that wore the number that was his on the roster was not him. It was so I don't know that he might have been there, but I don't think that I don't think that he worked out. At least I didn't see him take it.
But like you said, orange helmet, number 2, the Indiana, that kid in drills.
Also,
right. Drill, he immediately jumped out to me and Trevor in drills. Crazy. Like running cones, quick, in and out of breaks very quickly. And then he got to the one-on-ones, just getting wide open. Great slot, man. Great slot, all purpose, get him the ball, sweeps, screens. Definitely can see him, being on the radar of the Notre Dame coaching staff moving forward.
Yeah. I want to see his speed take a jump, but that's kind of what happens when you start recruiting kids who are freshmen in high school. The elite ones are going to have some of those crazy, that crazy speed at an early age, but a lot of other kids, it takes some time to get to that point in time. But I was impressed with what I saw from him, Shaun. I really liked the feet, There was another kid that we saw, Kevon Maddox he was the kid. He's another 2028 Indiana kid, smaller. They were both smaller, but really great feet and shifty, strong hands. There were some good pass catchers at this. And Kellen Moore was a kid from Detroit that I thought had a solid day. So there were some good receivers there in attendance. But the guys that we talked about are the ones that really stole the show.
And I did not get
a chance to see Benjamin Harris.
I'll give you another little nugget. I think this is before you walked up. Trevor and I were standing there. We were watching the drills. And Trevor literally had a couple of parents walk up to him and say, what are you guys looking for? I don't know if they thought we were staff, but it was like, what are you guys looking for when you watch these things? And Trevor was sharing his opinion. And just talking to multiple parents, you start to hear these kids, all of them are like doing the Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame circuit, right? So these are kids that are on the radar for these high-level schools. This is the talent, and it kind of gives you a picture of the type of wide receivers that not only have interest in coming to a Notre Dame camp now, and we talk about each and every year, it seems like more and more talented kids are interested in coming to the invasion. And so just talking, that's something we picked up as well. Like, okay, either these kids are coming from Ohio State, we'll talk about a defensive tackle that literally had just come from Ohio State the day before and could have not participated, could have just been there, but his competitive fervor wouldn't let him not go in and compete. And that's one of the things we loved about his performance. Yeah. So I love that, just finding out. Yeah. It's just like we look at offers, right? Like who's offering this kid? That's one of the things that I'm impressed by. Might not be in numbers. Rob Larson might not have the offers that you want to see in numbers. Once again, he's a sophomore.
Right.
But when I saw that Dillingham and Arizona State were in on him early, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's just like an offensive lineman. If you see I was on this kid or a defensive lineman early, it's like your antenna goes up to say, okay, we have to keep our eye on this kid. So he has that Arizona State offer, and that lets you know, he can be, somebody thinks he can be a high-level wide receiver on the next level.
Yeah. Well, I certainly do. I was texting one of my buddies in the recruiting world, works for one of the major outlets. I was like, hey, man, y'all don't have a profile on this kid. Y'all need to get up on this kid real quick because this kid is a flat out baller. Tight end was a good day at tight end, Shaun. Very talented group, very tall, long, fast. Not a lot of guys with real loose hips, but you kind of expect that. The guy that I thought looked the best in that regard is probably Jack Brown. But we saw Seneca Driver there. He was probably the most explosive. Seneca had a bit of a rough day catching the ball, but he had a great kind of back shoulder catch during the good on good period at the very end, the competition period at the end. You can tell he has hands. He looked like he was pressing a little bit too much, and then the first drop led to him pressing and led to the second drop. But some impressive physical skills. But when he did catch the ball, it looked really good. I just think he was kind of fighting himself a little bit. A lot of need for route running there, but some guys we saw that impressed us at tight end, Seneca Driver I mentioned, Jack Brown I thought, who looks like Mitchell Evans, like literally physically looks like Mitchell Evans when we're watching him go through drills. Grant Haviland from Georgia was a really impressive kid. Jackson Dollar, another kid that I thought had a really good day. Titus Hawk is massive. Like this is another event where it's like, I don't know if this is the best event for him to truly shine, because I'll bet you that kid is a monster blocker. Like he is a big old kid, like 6'6", 6'7". I thought he was a impressive looking kid. And then there was another kid that wasn't part of sort of like the in group, which is the guys in green. And that's Evan Murfield, who's a 2027 kid from Ohio, who I will now have my eye on moving forward, because I thought he was another kid that little tight hipped, but showed me some really nice things. JT Garachi was there. He was solid. But I thought the Evan Murfield kid really impressed me. He was the kid with the blue number 88, Shaun, that you and Trev kept talking about. You guys pointed him out to me because the tight ends were on the other side of the field. Like we were, they were only kind of running on the left side, so we didn't get to see them quite as much. They came over to the right a little bit later, but for the most part, they were on the left side. I thought he was impressive as well. But the 28 class, it was an impressive group of kids that were on campus on Friday.
And once again, whether it's 27, 28, these are kids going into sophomore and junior year of high school, right? So they're still developing. You talk about the tight hips, but there's some kids that we just watched them run, and it was like, yo, when they can just run and they don't have to make a move, like these are some impressive tight ends. Like you see some guys that can stretch the field. We saw some guys being able to stretch the field, but then they weren't able to finish on the other end. And so that kind of took away from, saying, man, they're athletic and big. But it was funny because I would love to get feedback from Mike Denbrock, because hearing you and then finally hearing him when I heard him, I'm like, boy, he's coaching these guys really hard. Like during this camp, like what is he upset? Is he expecting more? But it was just on the hoof. If that's your tight end group getting off the bus, man,
yeah,
that is
there was one point where they had made a couple really good catches in a row, like just contested catches, and Denbrock's like, "See, that's what we do at tight end. We're always open." It was just like you could see that he was encouraging, but he was having some fun out there too. Yeah. Offensive line wise, Shaun, Ben Nichols looked like I thought he would. I have him highly ranked. The guy that impressed me, well, not impressed me because Ben did too, but the guy that I was most curious about was Sullivan Garvin, because I like a lot about Sullivan's film, but right now I have him as a 3.5-star player because I just didn't love the athleticism. The foot quickness didn't look great to me. The ability to change direction didn't look great to me. Love the size, love the toughness, love the motor, love the power, love all that. I just didn't see a guy that moved incredibly well in high school. So he had one rep where he got bulldozed in one rep because I think he was kind of thinking the guy was going to go around him. We went right through him. It happened. But outside of that, I thought he looked really good. But the big thing was he moved really well for his size, like much more impressive. Like he's not going to all of a sudden look like, Quentin Nelson or Ronnie Stanley athletically or Joe Wald or anything like that. But like, the quickness, the change of direction, the foot agility, not heavy-footed, that impressed me, and that's going to bump him up. And that's what camps to me are for. It's not so much like I don't care if you look good blocking at a camp. It's not a real camp. It's not pads. I want to see how you move. If you can't block on film, I don't really care how you move. but I knew he could block. I knew he was tough. I knew he was physical, but I need to see how well he moved. And that impressed me. So his ranking will go up a little bit for me. And then the only other quarterback that I really got, or only other lineman I really got a chance to see much of was Cameron Wagner from 2027 from Illinois. That is an outstanding football player. You're talking about tree trunks. That young man's lower body is ridiculously big. But he moved well. And I see him as a tackle, barring him somehow slowing down as he gets older instead of speeding up like most guys do. He's a tackle for me at the next level. Tall, every bit of 6'6 plus, every bit of 285, 280, 285 at least. Real nice feet and strong. I was very impressed by Cam Wagner. Very impressed.
Like you said, Cam Wagner is one of those kids that I remember when he came up for his visit in the spring, and I just flat out asked him, like, what are you being looked at? And he was like, tackle. Notre Dame was looking at me to play tackle. And I was like, okay, good. I want to lock that in. And now you start to see he's one of those fast risers as well in the recruiting ranks. I think eventually, he Notre Dame. I know he did Texas A&M recently. So Texas A&M is in on him. Pretty much the Big Ten, SEC schools are all over this kid. And he's a dominant player. He really is. As soon as we walked up, it was like, okay, yep.
Yeah.
I was looking at him in comparison to some of the current Notre Dame offensive linemen that were actually helping out in drills and watching over drills. And I'm like, okay, he's bigger than Devin Houston. Like right now, who recently just switched from defensive line over to offensive line. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, so impressive kid, very impressive kid. And then Trevor and I, we were watching, and the McDermott kid.
I didn't get a chance to see him.
He's an Indiana kid. Yeah. Noblesville. Is that where he's from, Noblesville? Yeah. Impressive. Size-wise, good movement, good hips. Trevor pointed that out in conversation. So those are the two guys that stood out for us when we were watching. But, yeah, big time. He's a must-get. When you talk about Cameron Wagner, he's a must-get in that 27 class, in my opinion.
DB, the guy that really I didn't see Cooper Witten working out. I didn't see any reps he took. If he did work out, I believe he did. I just didn't see it. So I've seen his film, and he's very good. He was there. He was definitely on campus. I didn't get a chance to see a ton of the linebackers. I did think Jacob Godfrey moved pretty well. But a couple guys that I saw, the only DB that I saw that really okay, that's a really strong performance is Phoenix Evans, who's a 2028 kid that Notre Dame actually offered afterwards, which tells you a whole lot. But he's a Jersey kid from Don Bosco Prep. I was impressed by the athletes that were on campus from New Jersey. And that's the next two kids. There was two brothers that I saw on Saturday who I thought were outstanding. Chaz and Taj Gray. I believe Chaz is a 27 kid and Taj is a 28 kid, I believe. And both of them got offered after the camp, Shaun, and both of them earned it. They absolutely earned their offers. I was very impressed by both of them. Chaz they're from St. Joseph Regional, which I believe is the same high school as Audric Estime. It's either him or John Olmsted. Notre Dame had two different guys from those high schools, but there's two different St. Josephs, I believe. And Chaz, the older one, is more of a natural edge. He's more of a defensive end, Viper type of player, really good off the edge, really quick off the edge, good motor, good counter moves, very strong hands. Taj was doing both. So Taj had some reps. That's the 28 kid. Taj had some reps where he was lining up, coming off the edge, beating guys off the edge with just speed. And then the next minute, he's down there covering tight ends and running backs and one-on-ones playing linebacker. Two very impressive players from Jersey that I was impressed by. Like just twitchy, athletic, had some explosiveness. Like I said, Chaz is more of he's an end. Like just put your hand in the ground and you're an end. Taj, I'm not sure yet. It depends on how he's going to grow because he still runs like a linebacker. And then I went back and watched his film afterwards, and you're like, yep, that checks out. Like those two kids really impressed me. They were very impressive players as well. I will talk about the edge players, and then we'll finish up with the two D tackles. Sound good? Couple defensive ends that really impressed me, Shaun. And they both got offered, but one of them was, you know who we forgot to talk about? We'll end with Xander Edwards is what we'll end with. Mark Edwards kid, 28 running back. But defensive end wise, one kid that impressed me is a defensive end from New Jersey named Jackson Vaughn. who got offered. 2028 kid. I saw this kid and I'm thinking, oh, that's 2027 D lineman that we're 28 kid, rising sophomore, tall. I don't know what his official he looked 6'4" to me. Thin, but not skinny. Like he's 215 probably. Great frame, though. He's going to be 245, 250 by the time he's done in high school, most likely. Really explosive off the edge, Shaun. Really long, really strong hands. He really stood out to me and impressed me on Saturday. And then the other kid that I saw, also 28 kid, who looks like a senior, is I'm going to try to get his name correct here, but it's Asher Giotto from Florida. And when you see him without a helmet, I got to be honest, I was not expecting what I saw from him. You know, big kind of curly hair, looks kind of red, just that kind of big smile on his face. You know, big size kid, big country boy looking kid. But when he puts that helmet on, bro, and he gets down on the field, that kid is good. Quick off the edge, long arms, powerful, great motor. Those two young kids were impressive, Shaun, and I still can't get over the fact that those are rising sophomores. That's what blew me away. Is those two kids are rising sophomores. They were, I'll just say it, they looked more impressive even than the two kids that I saw at Notre Dame's camp last year that are going to Notre Dame, Dom Hulack and Joe Reef, who I both grade both as 4 stars. These kids were even more explosive than those two guys. Definitely two guys I'm keeping my eye on moving forward.
I think the most impressive thing is being able to watch them go up in drills and show the athleticism. The two brothers from New Jersey, let me tell you something. Max Bullock is quickly becoming, in my opinion, or we're seeing evidence that he is really good at evaluating the linebacker position. And linebacker is a little bit different, right? It's different because you're going after different types, or you have a type where you want speed, you want length, you want athleticism. But now you're getting guys that can play multiple positions. You're looking at those types, and then you're identifying those types. And to see the kids that were there, and to hear about the offers, both of the Grays, Phoenix Evans, you watch their film, now it's like, okay. And then you look at what he's getting in 26, the people he has coming in for officials, the offers that went out. And I'm super excited. I don't know about you. Trevor and I had this conversation maybe before you walked up. We were like, yo, I almost want to fast forward to Pot of Gold next year.
There might not be a lot of offers left for Pot of Gold next year.
Exactly.
Get in on some of these kids, man.
Exactly. It was like, yo, this is getting me hyped for the next Pot of Gold. Yeah. But, man, I'm right there with you, man. Al Washington, Max Bullock, their evaluation, the kids that are interested in Notre Dame, that are coming to camp, the kids that they're getting in on early, it bodes well. It definitely bodes well for the direction of this program on the defensive side on the front end.
Yeah. Want to finish up on the defensive side, showing a couple D tackles that we saw in attendance, a couple 2027 kids, big-time recruits for Notre Dame. Was very curious to see how they were going to look in person, and neither disappointed. And we're talking about Braden Parks, who's from Chicago, and then, of course, Devin Robertson, who's from Mississippi. You interviewed Devin right after the Pot of Gold, the day of the Pot of Gold he got offered, and he called Notre Dame his dream school. He's always tweeting out pictures of himself wearing Notre Dame gear. He's always tagging Nick Sebastian and Al Washington in tweets. But, experience has taught us, Shaun, that usually a Southern kid that's that high on Notre Dame in the past has been kind of a guy. I wish that kid was a little bit more athletic and a little bit more talented or a little bit bigger. And Devin's legit. And so we had a chance to see him in person. The film was good. Wanted to see him in person. Loved it. The thing I was first surprised by is he's a big kid. He's got, big gut, big booty, big thighs. But his arms are a lot more defined than I expected. He was getting in 4-point stances, and you could just see his tricep muscles just kind of locking out. Really nice burst. That was the big thing for me. He's a plugger, but he's a quick plugger. I mean, he's 6'3". He looked at least 305, 310 to me. Like he's a big boy. Real quick off the line. Really nice burst. He was getting off with a nice low flat back thing. But a lot of times big kids like that with the bigger bellies, when they come off at a flat back, their weight kind of tends them down, and they're a little out of control because they got so much. Not Devin. He was coming off, exploding and rising up, getting right into the backfield, and was impressed with his change of direction. I thought he had an excellent performance. Like it was a big time. It was better than I expected. I've reached out to some sources, and they were impressed by it as well. I'm like, am I nuts here for thinking that this kid performed very well? Like, no, I had the word elite thrown around to me. I was interested, Shaun, you share, when I'm done, you share what you said. He said about his performance. I was impressed by it, and I think Notre Dame was impressed by it. Same with Braden Parks. I really liked what I saw from Braden Parks. He's a bowling ball build, which Notre Dame wants to get a little bit more beef on the inside. But again, not a big, slow plugger. That's the thing. It's one thing to get a guy 300 pounds, but if they can't run, then ultimately they're nothing more than rotational niche players. They can't be every down players unless they're just that rare 330-pound Jordan Davis type. So there just aren't a lot of guys like that dominate. They just take up space. And that's what I liked from both of those young men is the athleticism, the movement skills, the motor, both very coachable. You could see them both kind of like, Al Washington starts talking and they stop. They look right at him. They're listening to him. They're not like walking away as they're listening to him. Like they're both like keyed in on what he's saying. I love coachable kids. That's the kind of body language I look for. I think the kid's listening, but I can't tell because he's got his back to the coach who's talking to him. They were both turned around. Got you, coach. And then they'd go make the correction on the very next play. So I was impressed by both of those kids, Shaun. They both looked the part. There was one other bigger kid there that I was impressed with too, and I'm trying to find his. I think it's Jeremiah Williams. I think was his name. I'm trying to find him. Give me just 1 second because it's number 22. Yeah, number 22 is Jeremiah Williams. He's a 2027 kid, built very similarly to Devin Robertson and Braden Parks, another big 300-plus pound kid. He was just a step maybe behind those other two kids, but also had a very strong performance as well. I was impressed by what I saw from him also.
I could not have talked about the big men better than you did.
Thank you, sir.
So you said you
now,
saw
just real quick, when we don't talk about a kid, it doesn't mean he had a bad performance. It's just there was hundreds of kids there and only three of us. And it was only an hour and a half of actual, 2 hours maybe of
shorter than normal, right?
Yeah,
a little bit shorter than normal.
So that's why we didn't get to see the running backs as much and the linebackers as much. We just couldn't watch everybody. But one running back I did keep an eye on was Xander Edwards, who's a 2028 kid. The reason I kept an eye on Xander is because he's the son of a legacy, Notre Dame legacy. Mark Edwards is his dad. He's also at Bowles High School, which is the same school as Asher Giotto, the 2028 defensive lineman. And, it's like with anything, Shaun, you see a legacy and you're like, I hope he's good. Yeah. And you watch Xander Edwards and you're like, yeah, he's good. And he's 5'11", he's 225 at least. He's a real thick kid. He looks exactly like what you think, the child of Mark Edwards looks like, 5'11", 225, really well built. The thing he lacks, and you could see it in drills, is he lacks like that home run burner speed. He's not Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price athletically, but he's also 20 pounds bigger than both of those guys as a rising sophomore in high school. Two things I saw that really impressed me about Xander, though. Number one, he's got great feet for a big back. And number two, he catches the ball extremely well. He's a pure running back. I mean, he's not a fullback. His game reminded me, Shaun, you're going to laugh at this, but I'm thinking dude, I'm watching a faster version of Audric Estime right now with better hands. That's what I thought I was watching Xander Edwards. Because Audric ran a 4.71 at the combine. I don't remember Audric getting caught behind that often. But Xander's got great feet, great balance, really clean change of direction. And whether he's a 4.5 or a 4.6 or a 4.7, he was that speed from step one. He is one step and go. But he doesn't run so fast he's out of control. He's not like a high effort runner. He's a very low effort runner. I thought Audric was a bit of a high effort runner. To get to full speed, he had to be really high effort. I don't think Xander's quite that, which is why he's able to show the foot quickness and foot agility he does. but he also had some very impressive down the field catches, like back shoulder seams, flipping his hips, catching the ball. I thought he had a really impressive performance. That's a Division I football player. And to me, I mean, it's early yet, and I don't love evaluating 2020, rising sophomores, but if there is such a thing as a Notre Dame caliber player at that age, he looked like one. As did, we talked about the others, Giotto, Jackson Vaughn, Phoenix Evans. There was guys that looked like Notre Dame caliber players already, and Xander was one of those players for me.
Yeah, before I get to him, just hearkening back to what you said about the defensive tackles, just some tidbits. You said that you talked to people that were very impressed.
Yeah. Sounds like the only person that wasn't impressed by him was.
And you were impressed, right?
Yeah.
He was not happy with his performance at the camp. Flat out said.
Don't you?
Yeah. He's a very polite kid too. Mr. Davis, I didn't put my best foot forward. And so when he says it, as soon as he says it, I text you. Like, wait a minute. Didn't you tell me that you love what you saw from the kid and the quickness and everything? Mm-hmm. And so he shared those reasons why he felt.
And that's why I reached out to some of my sources to see how they felt about him.
Yeah.
And they loved it. So that's why I was like, kid's hard on himself.
So, he's very hard on himself. He expects greater and he expects the best out of himself. And he had just come from camp at Ohio State the day before. He had just camped at Ohio State the day before, drove down, wasn't feeling the best, had every reason to go ahead, sit out, said no, and put on a performance that everybody considered to be elite. So that just shows you the competitor that you're dealing with when you talk about Devin Robinson. Like he said early on in the process, when he got the offer to Pot of Gold, Notre Dame's his dream school, great relationship with Al Washington and the staff that continues to grow. And so now he's like, man, now I have to go get better. And I'm like, yo, this kid is almost maniacal the way he's talking about the position in the game. I didn't get a chance to watch his drills. I did get a chance to watch him the last part, best on best. He looked pretty good to me.
Yeah.
So
he drove his guy into the backfield, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so then we go to Braden Parks, who has a Notre Dame connection because his godfather, who was on the sideline. That's why I looked, and you saw
me like 5 feet away from him. I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah. And I'm like, yo, you're like, is that Chris Zorich? I'm like, yeah. And so Chris Zorich is his godfather, so he has a great relationship.
I knew it was Chris Zorich. I was asking if he was here because he had someone here.
Yeah, and it was Braden Parks.
Yeah.
Braden Parks is the connection, that being his godfather. And a little birdie told me yesterday, I got this little bit of information yesterday, that they were at Brother Rice, that is the high school of Braden Parks, a couple of weeks ago, and they had a conversation before he came to the Invasion, and they were talking to him about his recruitment, and the birdie told me, I think he's going to end up in Notre Dame. Like, he really likes Notre Dame. Like, he really likes it up there. And I was like, okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to get a chance to talk to Braden Parks himself later on this week. But that's what stands out. And Braden Parks, when everything was tied up, offense, defense, and the competition, at the ending competition, they chose Braden Parks on the defensive side to catch punts. And I thought it was pretty cool. He caught the first one.
Yeah.
I thought the second one, for a big 300-pound defensive tackle,
carried on him. And
he still had it
around. Yeah.
He still adjusted enough to get his hands on it, and he dropped it at the last moment as he was going to the ground. He showed himself.
Sam Wagner was the offensive guy.
Yeah. So that just goes to show you.
Both. 2
Illinois kids, by the way. Just told you. I tell you all the time. What can you come get from Illinois all the time?
Linemen.
Big linemen. Mm-hmm. We have them in spades. Everything else, it's a little pick.
It's hit or miss.
Yeah, it's hit or miss.
27 in Illinois is absolutely low. Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan is loaded in the 2027 class.
It really is. It really is. But no, those 2 big guys, Notre Dame sits in great position with both of them. Great position with both of them. And they both put on a show.
Shaun, that is going to do it for this part of the show. The recruiting hour went a little bit longer, but we had a lot to talk about. We wanted to give you guys some full detail about what we saw from the Irish Invasion. But before we move on to part 2, folks, do us a favor. You see a little thumbs up button below. Go ahead, hit that thumbs up for us. It helps us spread the word. It's good for the algorithm. It lets YouTube know that, hey, this is a channel that we need to be spreading to people who do search us for Notre Dame and watch Notre Dame content. So we'd greatly appreciate that. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you got those notification bells on so you know when we go live. But, of course, the absolute best way to support Irish Breakdown is to sign up for our message board, and that's at boards.irishbreakdown.com. You can sign up for a monthly membership. You can sign up for an annual membership, or I got an email from people saying, hey, I'd like to support even more. You can always sign up for our booster club, which means we get that. All of that money goes to Irish Breakdown. But we also kind of, as a thank you, not only to get access to the board, but you also get some free gear. So if you sign up for the Shamrock Club or the Blue Club, you not only get an annual membership, but you also get a free IB Club mug, which only goes to IB Club members. I don't even have one. Shaun doesn't have one. Vince doesn't have one. Haven't even sent one to my mother, and I send her free everything that we have. She doesn't get that because she's not a Gold Club member or a Shamrock or a Blue Club member. If you sign up for the Gold Club, you not only get the free mug, but you also get an IB Club T-shirt of your preferred color and size. So a little bit of a thank you for those who support us even above and beyond normal and sign up for one of our booster clubs at boards.irishbreakdown.com.